True Talk, a podcast from TRULAND Equipment, where community, farming, and John Deere technology collide.
What's new in agriculture? What's happening in your neighborhood? And most importantly, who are the people that make it all happen?
True Talk, cultivating true conversations. Welcome back to the True Talk podcast, Grain Division edition.
Correct, Josh. Yes.
Good morning, Jackson.
Morning, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing good today. It's a great day to be in Bluffton, Indiana again, recording live.
That's right. We seem to find ourselves a nice central location to be doing podcasts from.
Right. Great space, great room. So
also, incidentally, where the Grain Division is headquartered, right?
Yeah. Let's get into it. Luke, welcome back, man.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, got Luke Rinkenberger here. I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us what your title is.
Well, I'm the grain handling department manager and kind of the head of the sales there. Kind of oversee everything, but do a little bit of everything.
So how'd you find yourself in this position? It's a very unique deal, I think, for a John Deere dealership.
Yeah, right off the bat, we have a grain division, huh?
Yeah. It's funny. I just asked you a question. I'm going to interrupt already. A lot of people find it funny because my truck came from the Bluffton store, and so all of the KFG side, the Ohio side. Goes, why is there a Brock sticker on your truck? And I go, we sell grain bins now. Come on. You need some grain bins? I'll get you in touch with someone that can help you out.
So you're saying we have a grain handling division.
Yeah, and actually it's interesting. It started out, I think Dick and Dave Troxel were selling grain bins out of their garage 65 years ago. It's been years ago. It's been a lot of years ago. And it started out as Troxel, I think it was bin and dryer sales. Started selling farm fans dryers. Yeah, up until the new building here, we were still working out of the original house, and the old parts department was kind of where the old garage was. So they started out as that, and then they transitioned into implement with the Ford dealership in Bluffton.
So this is actually, I'm glad you brought that up. This actually predates the John Deere dealership then.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is crazy to think about, because I feel like most times if you hear the background story behind a dealership, they say, I started out selling Case and Ford and John. They would sell more than one lineup, one brand. But we didn't even start out doing that here at Troxel's or Bluffton. It was grain bins. That was our claim to fame to begin with, right?
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. So 65 years ago. So it's my understanding that the couple, again, Dick and Dave Troxel, great brothers, one of our parent companies, if you will, of TRULAND Equipment. Dave had a real passion for the grain division. True or false?
True. And they were also farmers as well. So they understood, grain handling, what it took to store things. They knew the implement side of things, the farm side of things. So then it just made sense for them to get into the ag side of things and get into the implement business. It's kind of funny. We started out selling grain bins at Troxel, and then TTG, then now TRULAND. And now we get people come up to us and say, I didn't know you sold grain bins. And it's like, well, funny you should say that. But So
full disclosure, this is the only location that does it.
Correct.
Yeah, correct.
Now, we do push some augers around to other locations that we start that process here. Should do a little true or false with this. True or false, we do spread some augers around.
True.
True or false, this is the only division, this is the only store that actually has the grain division facilities in it.
Correct.
So, which means this is the only facility that has the staff to man that division as well.
Correct. Yeah, we have a full line of millwrights that come out and install the grain legs and do repairs and whatnot. We maybe getting ahead of the talk here, talking points, but we usually go about an hour. We're kind of stretch an hour 15, maybe an hour and a half away.
Okay.
Is what we generally target for new installs and things, but we have traveled a couple hours away if a guy buys a used dryer or something like that. And from one of our current customers, if he sells it, through Marketplace or something like that, we'll travel to install that. We've done it before.
Dryers are high maintenance.
They are. So we want to make sure that we can take care of them. When we do sell one, we want to make sure we can take care of the customer base. So that's why we kind of try to limit it to around here. However, if someone from one of our outlying stores needs grain bin parts or something for an auger or something for a bin, they can get a hold of our department and we can put it on the daily transfers that we have and get it out to any location. We do that quite often.
That's great. So we can push parts around.
So I do want to put a pin in that because there's a couple points I want to come back and visit. But first, I want to kind of know how you found yourself in this position. Were you always in the grain handling business? Did you start at the grain handling business? Did you start somewhere else in the dealership and like how did
Give us your bio.
Yeah.
So
please.
my
Yeah.
bio. Okay. So first of all, I'll tell you when I was born. No, I'm kidding. No, I started out, I always liked construction. So I ended up with a bachelor's degree from construction engineering technology from IPFW at the time. I did home remodeling with my father-in-law for probably 5 years. Then I went to Meyer Building, a local company in Craigville.
Just did a podcast with them.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay, doing engineering and design for them for 9 years. Loved it. Things kind of slowed down in that. When would that have been? I've been here now for about 16 years. So right about that 2009 timeframe, things slowed down there. My brother Link, I'll plug out to him as an ag salesman, he sells here, sells green paint here. So he told me that they were looking for someone to come into the grain handling division. So I was able to bring in CAD design and some of the engineering, and there was just enough design and engineering in what we do at the grain handling facilities that it piqued my interest, and it's been a good fit to get in here. So then I came in basically doing sales and design and engineering then.
So at that point, which I love it because when I was at Purdue, we had a grain bin basically design class too.
Correct.
And we did some of that stuff. So you did too, obviously, Jackson. Yeah.
Yeah, that class is still there.
It's a pretty cool class.
Awesome.
Yeah. So when you came here, was there a need for that? Was that what did you step up the department at that time because of what you brought in, and were they not utilizing those things like AutoCAD?
Yeah, it was still the old drafting board and T-square, and which worked good enough, for what it was doing. But as today's farm isn't like Grandpa's farm. Everything's changed tremendously. So that just brought in another level of being able to just get a little better visual, and now we can kind of take a Google Earth image and overlay new drawings over that just to get a little bit more of a visual of what's going on, and then, present that to the customer. And we invested probably 15 years ago in a total station, which is like a surveying piece of equipment. And a couple of years ago, we invested into a robotic total station. So now one person can go and do layout, but basically we can go out to a farm, record everything, all their grain bins, their buildings, and then get it thrown into the drawing. And, we can get down to the 16th of an inch if we want to. But then we can design the system to fit in and know it works, rather than I think it's going to work because I think that's how it laid out. And now we can go out there with the total station and a prism and plot exact points instead of, stretching a string line and doing a 6, 8, 10 right triangle off of it and trying to get it square,
A squared plus B squared equals C squared.
Yeah.
Come on.
So it sounds like to me that you're coming up with, granted, it was probably always a custom design back in the day, but it's really now more customized. It really is a customized deal. It's not a modified cookie cutter kind of plan. We've actually gone out, Google Earth images, surveying, laid that all out. And that stuff, like you mentioned, Josh, we actually were getting into that when I was at Purdue a little bit. It was not just drawing a generic plan on AutoCAD, but actually looking at the Google Earth layout of that farm or that plot of land.
It's cool. I want to get into kind of maybe the job from start to finish here in a minute, but it's cool to think just since you've been here, Luke, that the technology has probably changed a bunch, and the ability to bring in Google Earth. You didn't have Google Earth 16 years ago.
Right.
And now you do. So you brought a step of technology in when you came in the door, which was basically some CAD and some computerized stuff that you guys were doing longhand. And that's progressed significantly since you've been here, even now with the technology you've had. Let's back up here.
Yep.
So obviously you've been here for 16 years.
Yep.
I think you and I are pretty close in age, if I remember right. Give us the rundown on your staff, how we're manned here, what kind of staff we have, what everybody does, that kind of thing.
Yeah, in our office, we're kind of set up like the ag side. So for our customers, we've got a parts, a sales, and a service side, and then we've got like an admin. You first walk in the door, we got Angel Zoll in there. She's our administrator. We kind of call her the office, the mom of the office that keeps us all in line.
On task.
She is awesome at what she does.
Been here for a while.
Yeah, she's been here for quite a while, and so she knows it. She could actually, probably run the parts, and she could take care of about everything if she needed to. But so she's there. And then we've got Ray and Reynolds. He is our service manager. Probably 4 or 5 years ago, before it was always Steve Herman was the guy that was here forever that guys knew. And he and I would sell, we would schedule the crews, we would, sell parts. We would do all this, and it just got to be, pretty overwhelming with all that. So we tried to step up and get bring service in. So Ryan handles the service side of things. So
what's that look like on the grain bin side?
So somebody has a plugged bin or an auger breaks down, a bearing goes out, they call in. We've got a new phone system. So you'll call in. I think the grain handling department, I don't know it by heart, but we've got our own specific phone number for our department. Yep. But if you call into the main line, they give the option for grain handling. You click on that and pick that, and then you can choose, I think, parts, service, or sales.
Okay.
And then it's kind of dedicated. If it's service, Rayan will take lead with it. But if he's not around, anybody in the office will answer. Right. We'll get it to the right person. We're small enough out there. It feels it's just a little different out there. It's maybe I might get in trouble for saying this, but it's what guys say. Oh, this is what it used to be when dealerships were just family owned or but so we got Rayan doing the service. I'm taking lead on sales. Rayan's been helping me out with sales too. We kind of tag team, and it's kind of nice. He jives real well with some customers. I jive better with others, and it just works really well that way. And then we got Mike Caines in our parts department. So people come in, and he does a great job figuring out what they need. Sometimes they'll say, "Hey, I need a wheel for the end of my sweep," and okay, well, what kind of sweep is it? Well, it's a Brock sweep. Well, Brock didn't have a sweep back then. It's so we got to do a little bit of digging in sometimes to figure it out. And then we've got what do we have? We've got about 6 full-time millwrights out there.
Expand on the mill. I love the millwright title. I mean, I think they're some amazing people, but I think a lot of people don't know truly what a millwright is. They probably think steel mills.
Correct. I think that's a good point.
They're actually kind of magic and miracle workers. They tease me a lot. I'll sell something and say, well, I drew it up on the computer and we should be able to do this. And Dewey or Ryan will say, hey, bring your computer out here and let it show us how it's supposed to happen, and just because you can draw it up doesn't mean that it's going to work. So
the old engineer versus the tech side.
There's an old show, this is going to date me, but called The Fall Guy. And on the theme song, it says something about the stunned man makes Redford look so fine. And the millwrights make us sales guys look really fine because they just make it work, So they'll go out and they'll fabricate, cut, weld, measure, make sure the pipes can get piped in. It just there is kind of a science and you can have an idea of how it's going to go, but unless you've been there and seen it and done it. So a lot of times if I'm working on a big job or selling a job, we'll call them in the office and say, okay, this is what I got going on. This is how I think I want to do it. What do you guys think? And they'll be like, no, Luke, I don't think we'd want to do it that way. Let's try to find a different route. And
so that's almost always sounds like to me like step number one. I mean, is when you get that first idea that you're going to make this sale, do you guys do that before you actually make the sale, I guess? Or is it we've made the sale, they're buying the bins, now we need to get the millwrights out to verify how we're going to plan it out?
It kind of depends on how intricate the job is. If it's something I feel I feel over 16 years I've gotten to feel pretty comfortable about things, but by no means do I know it all. So if I go out to a job and it's a grain bin and they've got a dryer and they're going to feed it with a blower line off of the dryer, okay, I can figure that stuff out. But if we're going to try to fit a bin into a tight spot and then try to get a leg or a pipe down to it from a leg, or it starts getting a little more intense. Sometimes here lately, bins are getting bigger, and the trend we've been doing is you put a big bin up and the leg that's there isn't tall enough. So we run we call it a double run. It's a chain loop, chain drag that goes on the roof of the bin, brings it down to the eave of the bin, and you can hit that with the pipe. It adds a little bit to the cost, but yet you can still function with the size of leg that you have. So in those situations, I'll get the millwrights to go out, or I about always take Rayan out with me, seeing that he was a millwright for 16 years. He's got that knowledge too. And sometimes Rayan will take one of the millwrights out and, go figure it out. So I guess to answer your question is depending on the job, we'll go out there and do a preliminary, assessment of what we need.
Yep.
It seems like they're there when you need them to bounce ideas off. I'm guessing
Right.
every once in a while, if you're looking at a layout on a computer screen, you can call them in and say, hey, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
Is there a way to make this happen?
Yep.
So it sounds like, we're obviously incredibly fortunate to have the amount of millwrights we have here. I'm going to guess that's a job and a skill there's fewer and far between out in the world today.
Yeah. It's we keep looking for the next young guys to come in, and it's just, they got to have a love for it. The guys that are doing it, they just like it. It's just in them,
Fabricators and designers and welders and visionary kind of people. Yeah.
Right.
There's a skill set there. So, and you said we have 6 of them on staff.
I'm trying to.
That's
off the top of my head, but
that's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're probably pretty fortunate to have that many.
So historically, I guess I'm curious, Josh mentioned, is it something that we've trained guys up to that point, or we've always gone out and kind of recruited them? Since it's such a unique position, I guess, how do we always go about or try to go about finding millwrights?
I mean, a lot of times there, could be farm boys that are, wanting to work, off the farm, but yet still stay connected with the farm. Typically, you try to find those younger guys to come in, try to mentor them, teach them, and grow them that way. We typically don't get too many, older millwrights coming in, because some millwrights in the factories, sometimes they've got lifts and everything else, so they don't have to climb. But here, I think today we got a couple guys out on top of a grain leg fixing a bearing that went out on a feed system, and it's not. You don't want to say weather when we're doing this, but it's not the best weather out there today. So, so most guys, as they get older, they don't typically look to get into to be a grain handling millwright.
The climbing and the heights and obviously some athleticism to get up and down. And I get it. That's great. I mean, like I said, I think to me, it's along with the fact that we're always looking for techs too. You're looking for that next person that loves that has that it factor. I can create, I can work with my hands, I can visualize and solve and have the skill set. Welding, even welding in itself, that's a heck of a skill set, to have. So fantastic. All right. So pretty decent sized staff.
Yep.
10, 12 people probably total.
Yeah. We've got 3 or 4 trucks. We've got a couple guys who are dryer techs for the harvest time. They'll help out the millwrights through the rest of the year when we're not doing dryers. But I mean, we typically have 3 trucks on the road every day. Sometimes they're going to bigger jobs and working. Sometimes it's repairs. It just, you never know what you're going to get. And you can have a plan, and then you get that phone call that says, hey, I need, I've had this problem. I need someone. And we're usually able to respond pretty quickly. I think there was a windstorm on a Friday night, and a couple guys came in on Saturday and bolted a roof down for a guy. Just because, it needed to happen. You just don't say, oh, we'll let it go over the weekend. Man. So, yeah, we try to respond pretty quickly when that happens.
Dryer techs are the most popular guys around here in the fall, I'm sure.
Boy.
Yeah. God, yeah. You're always guaranteed to have 2 systems that are going to fight you. One of them's row starter systems in the spring because it sits for 11 months, and the other one's your grain dryer.
Yeah.
And have some demons that creep in.
And speaking of that, I'll put in a little plug. We try to do pre-seasons on those. So in June, July, we'll start. Well, we'll schedule it any time, but we'll send our guys out there and basically just look everything over, make sure the mice didn't chew up any wires or anything. Make sure everything's greased up, make sure everything's, and we'll dry fire it if they've got the gas there. Just make sure they're ready to go for fall. And we also do the same things for grain legs, or even the grain systems in general. We'll go out, we'll check gearbox oils, make sure belts are good. So, and we could do that any time of the year. Most guys kind of want to wait till they have their crop hauled out of the bins in the spring. But anytime. So that's a little plug for that.
So PSA on grain system inspections is what it sounds like.
Right. Well, it seems like it might be obvious for some, but others, it's always just something to keep in mind, whether it's equipment, whether it's grain handling systems, whether it's, because it's always seasonal kind of work, right? So it's not like it's being used 24. If it's being used 24/7, it's being maintained 24/7. But when you only use it for a month, 2 months out of the year, whether it's, like I said, an implement, a machine, a leg, a dryer, probably best to look it over. It's probably a great PSA to mention, because we've been hounding that for planters, any other kind of equipment, because guys will try and pull stuff right out of the field or right out of the shop and go straight to the field. And lo and behold, more times out of not, it doesn't really work very well.
Yeah. Well, and then again, you think about the way we farm nowadays too. It's funny, we're sitting here in the spring doing this podcast, but the reality is, we're going to use dryers a lot more in the fall. We're going to use legs a lot more in the fall, but we use grain systems throughout the year. I mean,
Right.
You know, guys haul a lot of corn in the winter.
Yeah.
It's a pretty crappy job when it's freezing and snowing. But
Yeah, and you never know what the markets are. But I just had a customer just say yesterday that if he'd have had a 30,000 bushel grain bin last fall, he would have kept the beans, but he didn't have anywhere to go, so he had to sell them at harvest prices.
Right.
And he said, look at what the price is today compared to what the price was
when they were coming out of the field.
When they were coming out of the field, and he said, I'd have,
you could have paid for that bin almost.
It would have been close, on that. So we do use the bins and the legs. So yeah, we're going to try to get flyers out on the western side of things. A lot of people kind of knew we did grain handling, but now that we've became TRULAND over, on the eastern side of things, we're going to try to get some flyers out there, try to get a little bit more exposure to the fact that we do handle some of this.
Sell some whole goods and parts across the territory.
Well, and that's a great segue into the next thing I wanted to ask was since we became TRULAND, have you seen any kind of growth or expansion, or has it been like you kind of said, the awareness isn't necessarily there, so you think pushing that awareness out might get you more exposure and then thus more sales or more,
I think pushing that out will help get us more exposure over that way. Grain handling, it's a little different than the ag side. It's a little easier to go online, shop for a tractor, shop different dealerships, buy it from somewhere else or whatever. Grain handling is a little more, I will say personal, but you have a relationship with the guy doing the work for you.
It's that customized product.
Right.
You can build and price a piece of equipment. You can't build and price a grain leg that doesn't exist on a grain system that's not there because it needs to be designed because your barnyard is not the same as the neighbor's.
And then you got to be able to take care of it for the guys. So there's a lot of relationships there. So we just, because of some dealerships and stuff, the way it was on the Brock side of things 20 years ago, there was some dealers that were across the line in Ohio, and Dave Troxel, it kind of had a gentleman's agreement. Hey, we'll kind of do what we do here. You kind of do what we do there. And some of those dealerships, I think, are phasing out, or maybe just things are just changing a little
transitioning.
Yeah. So we've had some phone calls about that. Hey, we're looking to find someone to help us take care of it. So it's kind of hard to just go in there and cold call on someone and say, hey, let me take over your grain handling equipment, because they've already got a good relationship with. If they're doing good, they're not going to look for you. But we do want to put that awareness out there, because we do want to take care of our John Deere customers as a whole if we can. Right. We like to keep it in the family if we can.
Correct.
So. And I agree with that. When someone has their guy on their grain facility, they want to know the guy's going to be there when they need him, and that's important on the relationship side. So you brought up the guy that said he kind of wished he'd put a bin up. So I've always said you're in this business long enough, in agriculture long enough, you see the cycles in the market, right, and the good economy and the economy that's not so good. And I feel like we're kind of climbing out of the kind of a rough spot. Mm-hmm. How does that ebb and flow? Does it affect the grain business as well? I mean, obviously, if farmers don't have money to spend, they're not going to put facilities up. But at the same time, if the grain markets aren't great, it'd be nice to have a place to store some grain, right? So how does the economy usually ebb and flow with your business?
I mean, it's been, I think 2016 was probably the last kind of slow side on the grain handling side of things, but it's just been pretty robust the last couple of years. Last year there was definitely a downturn, and this year it's softer as well. Okay.
But so you're feeling it like we are.
But we do have guys. We sold several bins last year. Hey, the crop's going to be bigger one way or another. I don't want to sell it out of the field. I want to store it. So we sold quite a few bins last year later in the season, and definitely had room to get them in to where we could help that out and do that. But that typically happens. Dave Trucks always used to say, you get we'll get the early order sales, because they have early order programs that just went off, but they're still going to be aggressive on their pricing. But he said, usually when you get the crop in the ground, crops start coming up, guys start seeing, hey, I'm going to get something. Yeah. It usually picks back up. And then there's always the maintenance. If they're not going new, they're going to maybe improve an auger or, replace a dump pit or something like that. So
repair something existing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
How much contractors do we have to use? How much stuff do we have to contract out?
We subcontract out our concrete work.
Okay.
And
smart move.
Yeah. It's just, it's hard work. And years ago, we were tied in with a guy that would build our bins and do the concrete work. So he'd have both of his crews doing concrete, and then one crew would start erecting bins while the other guys were doing concrete for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
He had since retired, so we've got another. We can use depending on the area. Sometimes we get too far away from where our normal contractor, our concrete guy, would work from. But he'll travel. We can figure out contractors, but we've got a preferred contractor. We use Ed Linker out of Markle a lot. He does a great job for us. So we've got a good relationship with him, and so we subcontract out the concrete, and then we got bin builders that come in to build the bins. Okay. They're a commercial crew. They can do anywhere from a 18-foot bin up to the largest we sold was 105-foot diameter, 24 rings tall. So, wow. and they build even bigger ones than that. So we subcontract those guys out also.
So we're not necessarily building the bins.
Not necessarily the bins. No, okay. We just the millwrights.
Accessories, so to speak.
Yeah, we've got enough work to do on the millwright side of things.
Yep.
And building bins is pretty repetitive. Let's be honest.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
It can be. Yeah. You got to make sure you get things done right for sure. But yeah, so we save the millwrights for the fabrication and subcontract out. It just makes sense.
Okay. Still the bulk of business walk-ins, referrals at this point. I mean,
probably we do some marketing, some advertising, but it's a lot of word of mouth. Hey, you built a bin for my buddy. Can you quote one for me? Like I said, it's kind of hard to go out and just cold call. Yeah, a lot of referrals, a lot of phone calls in. Hey, looking for this, and then how can you help me? I always joke with the ag salesman. I say that in the grain handling department, I'm a needs provider. I'm not a salesman. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to solve. I'm meeting your need. Yes, I'm selling you a bin, but I'm meeting your need.
That sounds like the TRULAND theme right there.
So,
partner and provider.
That's funny you say it that way.
No, that's great.
But it sounds like maybe here coming up, maybe an uptick in marketing, like you said, to try and maybe just spread awareness to that other. Maybe not so much like really pressing it, but maybe just some like internal almost. Hey, let your customers know we can meet your needs when it comes to bins.
Yeah.
I bet we have some coworkers that don't know.
No. And
550 employees.
And I'm, like I said, so I'm, primarily dealing with some of our Eastern stores that weren't part of the TTG side. And so I drive around a truck that had been sent over from the Bluffton store here. And so of course there was a Brock sticker on it. And I'm telling you, about every time I show up to a customer's farm or location or field, they go, why do you just like Brock really like a lot? And I go, no, we sell Brock bins.
Yeah.
And they go, oh.
I was in a store the other day, one of our stores, our Woodburn store, and we were talking about our territory from extreme to extreme, and we figured 185 miles, and it was 3 hours from tip to tip from our Frankfurt store to our Wauseon store. So it's very likely, first, obviously we can't support that whole territory on the building and the project side, but we can certainly support it on parts and some whole good items. So
kind of funny, real quick, when you say about our Frankfurt side, the Brock dryers that we sell are built in Frankfurt, right across the road from our
dealership,
TRULAND dealership. So we actually have if someone needs a dryer part, we can usually get it ordered, direct parts transfer, and get her in. So
that's funny. You mentioned
it happens pretty quick.
Yeah, that's right, because I do recall, driving past the Frankfurt store on my way to Purdue, oftentimes not, and then always looking across and seeing the Brock building there.
Still there. Still there. It's great. So let's talk about just a big project we've done. I kind of from start to finish, but describe the project, maybe something that we've done in the last couple of years that's been pretty mammoth, and maybe what it was, what parts were involved, and then obviously step us through from start to finish what that looks like.
Yeah, so we've done several. Probably we've done 2 or 3 of them over the past few years that involved legs, like the whether they had 1 or 2 bins or no bins at all, and you go in and they say, hey, I want to put a dryer in, leg, dump pit, building. So the initial is like the one we're doing this year, the customer, he's putting a leg and a dump pit in. He's always used an auger to fill his wet bin. So this year, we went out, we had to take shots ahead of time of his existing bins to make sure we fit everything in. We just went out last Friday and laid it, did a layout so we can get started on the concrete on that. But typically, so we'll meet with the customer. Okay, what do you need? How many what kind of storage are you looking in your corn? Do you want bean storage? When it comes to a dryer, okay, how many bushels a day do you want to go through? And then we start sizing. Okay, you don't size the dryer necessarily for the total bushels of the day. You size it based off of 24 hours because a dryer works better if it runs 24/7 consistently. So, I figure take the bushels they want, divide it by 2, see, because you can do half of it during the day and kind of size the dryer that way. So come up with a dryer size. And then there's different dryers available. Some farmers, they want 300 bushel an hour. Some farmers will want, 2,000 bushels an hour. So, and then you look at how those dryers fit in. There's low profile dryers, which are longer, got the fan at one end. There's the tower dryer, which looks like a big old silo sticking up there. Yep. And then what's come on in the last 3-4 years are the mixed flow dryers. They look like they got triangles or the pigeonholes on the side. Yep. And that's why I joke about the needs provider, but that's why you really have to talk to the customer, the producer, just see, okay, what are your goals? What do you want? What all do you want on everything? Yeah. So then you go and you figure all that out, figure what type of dryer, and then you start doing a layout. Some guys, we've done a couple where we've put the dump pit, they want it inside of a barn big enough to hold a semi. So we've been designing like our overhead structures to hold the overhead bin for load out and for wet storage. We make that structure maybe a little wider and a little taller so that the building goes all the way under it. And then the only projection you have coming through the roof is just the spout from the overhead rather than trying to build around the legs of the structure. So we had several guys that wanted that tied in with it. You need to think about if you're getting into a project that big, you need to look at, okay, where are you going to put your electrical room? Because it's not just a push button, panel with push buttons. No. So you got to figure out, okay, where do we fit the electrical room in? How do we tie that in? Where the transformer is going to go, for the electrical side of things. Where's the gas coming in? Is it natural or, so you got to figure all those things out.
There's a lot of little things, and it's starting to remind me about being at Purdue, and like Josh mentioned again, our grain handling class. And that was one of the things that we'd have to do. We would use formulas by the book, right? Just ASABE standards, where we'd say, okay, this many cubic feet, this many bushels per hour, this long of a run for this rating of K, stuff like that. But like, is there formulas for that? Or do you guys kind of have a general plan that you start with and then can deviate based on the setup, or how does that look?
Most of the manufacturers have all the specs like, okay, we know that a 10-inch pipe will do about 6,000 bushel an hour, or a 12-inch pipe will do about 8,000 bushel an hour. Just general, you just guidelines that you just kind of know. And then all of their equipment is, we order it based off of, they've got the specs. Hey, this is a 6,000 bushel an hour conveyor, or it's a 3,000. So, and then like on the bins for aeration, for cooling the hot grain or keeping it in condition, Brock has a air solver program where we can put in the bin size, let's try a 10-horse fan. Oh, what happens if we go to 15 horse? Oh, there's such a thing where you get too much horsepower and the static pressure is too high and it stalls out, and then you don't get the air through it. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you got to look into.
Going on.
But you're not breaking out your psychometric charts, are you?
No,
that's all built in.
No. Yes, sir. That's
they did make us get psychometric charts out and actually, use them and plot them to understand. And then they go, oh, here's a fancy tool. It's like having to learn long division, then getting a calculator.
Right. It's like my professors at college. Hey, we want you to learn how to do this, but you don't have to memorize everything.
Yeah, exactly.
You just have to know where to go to get the info. So we'll do that initial discussion with the customer. We'll come back in, then we'll do some initial drawings. Pretty basic in AutoCAD. To figure out pipe slopes. You
angle of repose. That's what I remember.
Wet grain. We got a customer. She just loves angle of repose. I want to make a T-shirt for her someday on that. But anyhow, but yeah, we there's only. It seems like our leg sizes, the leg heights are around that 125 to 135. You get too much higher than that, and then you start getting a lot of grain damage. Yeah. It's a couple of them that we've done. You can, if you situate the leg on the same side as your big bins and a wet bin, 125 foot leg can hit a couple of 50,000 bushel bins. You go that 135, you go up a little bit farther, then you might be able to hit 120,000 bushel bins. So it's just what I love about it is no farm's the same. I guess if it was cookie cutter, I would have probably been bored with it a long time ago.
For sure.
But every operation's different. Every just like every farmer's personality is different.
Mm-hmm.
So is their grain setup, and I've really enjoyed that. You get to know the customers, you get to know what they want, and what works really well for one guy isn't going to work well for someone else.
So the bigger challenges are probably when they already have something existing and you got to work around it, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that's where you just want to make sure you get all the I's dotted and the T's crossed. Make sure you don't miss something. So then once we come up with a basic, then we'll throw quotes together on the leg and on the, and try to, and here again, that's where we'll pull the millwrights in and say, okay, this is the scope of the project we're going to try to do. Now let's try to estimate labor on this. And from what we've estimated to how it turns out, our guys are really
pretty accurate.
Pretty accurate.
I was going to say that to me, it sounds like something like there's no way you could ever get, I shouldn't say not accurate, but like down to the, plus or minus 1%. It sounds like to me like there could be a huge variation. Not saying that you guys don't do a great job of trying to inspect everything before you quote it out, but I know me quoting out stuff, granted my stuff that I deal with is not quite as complex as a grain setup, but like it's easy just to forget one line item that could throw it off, maybe a little bit or maybe $1,000 or, which for you, that factor could be way greater, but it seems so easy to overlook something.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times if it's a new project, they call it a greenfield project, you're going out into a greenfield and you're starting brand new. It's a little easier to hit it dead on. When it gets interesting is, when it's an existing and the guys are there working and then inevitably it's like, hey, while you're here, can you come and work on this for me? And which is great.
I know that phrase.
But, or if they're putting something together and realize, hey, we got to make a change here, last minute design change because this isn't gonna fit or work or something like that. I'm sure.
I had that at a job last fall. I thought that a piece of equipment was going to work, and things just didn't quite lay out the way I thought. So we brought that back. We got a different piece of equipment in that was going to work better, and it worked well. In that, yeah.
So you've laid it out. You've brought the millwrights in. You've gone over what they think it's going to take and any potential hang-ups, and then we do the cost analysis.
Yep.
Present it to the customer.
Yep. And
sometimes it can be a little frightening, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times, I hate to say that that COVID word, but pre-COVID, post-COVID, if a guy bought a bin or did something pre-COVID and then they haven't priced anything since, and then they come and they ask for a price, they're kind of shell shocked. It's just the pricing just changed. Seemed like it changed everything. It's come down some. Yeah, so it depends.
And that's in all the industries too.
Right.
The vehicle industry, the electronics industry.
And I'll say it's very rare that we go into this and the customer is just totally shocked.
They have an idea.
Mm-hmm. They've done that. That's the one thing that with the internet and everything, they can do a fair amount of research ahead of time, and they do. You're not going to buffalo someone and blow smoke at them.
So you'll sit with that customer, go over that design layout, talk about pricing, and then I'm assuming at some points they want to maybe do some changing or retrofitting and.
Yep. So we'll bring him in. We've got a conference room where we tried the first podcast, but we got a conference room out in our grain handling warehouse. Got a big TV on the wall. We'll hook the computer up. The customer comes in, got a couple sons. We just sit there and say, okay, this is what we've come up with, and this is what we're thinking. What do you guys think? Well, what if we would put this bin over here, and then with the CAD and the computer, we can change that. It's okay, and let's see how this looks. Let's see how that looks. And eventually we get down to like, okay, yes, this is what we want to go with. And inevitably they're all pretty similar to jobs that we've done. So when I actually start a job, I'll talk to the customer and I'll think back, okay, whose job does this remind me of? And then I'll pull his drawings in and we'll kind of go from there a little bit. But yeah, then once they pull the trigger on it, a lot of times from October 1st to December is when the best early order programs are available for the grain handling, because they're trying to keep their facilities, their manufacturing facilities going through the winter.
Right.
So they offer pretty good discounts. So a lot of times the customer, and and it never fails. You're in the heat of harvest with service and with dryer calls and just everything. But then you got to be focusing and bugging customers on quoting, and so you kind of feel bad, but yet that's what you got to do.
Well, it sounds like, I mean, we keep talking. I keep bringing up like the customizable, and you just talked about you sit down and meet with them in a conference. It sounds like for building a relationship, it's like you said, you don't just come in and say, I want a grain bin. Yeah, sure. I sign my name and you pull the trigger and do it. I mean, it's a process. And so you're building that relationship with that customer, with our partner. And so things like, yeah, it is harvest, but I'm calling you because I want you to get a good deal, not because I'm trying to get money out of you. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like, hey, we had to make this change because and they're probably more understanding to things like that because it's not just a one and done. It's a long process where we're not, but we're building that relationship, I guess.
Yeah. And they'll tell you, you'll say, hey, I know you're not doing it now, but the best early orders come out in October. You mind if I call you? Oh yeah, call me.
Sure.
No problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Do that. So
this sounds kind of fun, really.
I know.
Sounds like a fun
that's
gig.
what I'm saying.
I'm not lying.
yeah,
What?
it is. It's pretty good.
Put you on the spot. Give me a couple cool stories or a story about one of your favorite projects that you did.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. What's his favorite build?
I think,
geez.
Full disclosure, he brought up where we tried to record the podcast. We recorded this one time and had some sound issues, so we're doing it again. And I remember we talked a little bit about. I always joked about being in top of a bin and losing your tools down in the corn.
Yeah.
They don't find them until they plug up an auger. But
yeah, we've had wrenches and stuff plug things up and come out. Man, I don't know. We've had so many neat and interesting jobs.
You have a Mount Everest somewhere. You had to have like a Mount your Mount Everest. The one that the ultimate challenge. It came together, and you're like, man, that was.
Man.
I don't know. It's kind of hard to say because I kind of sometimes feel like a lot of them are that. There's a lot of challenging situations, and it's like, yeah, that just came together really, really good. I'll probably wake up in the middle of the night tonight and think, oh yeah, this is the one I should have said.
Oh man, yeah.
But I get it. Victories are good. That means you're doing a job that you really like, and it's adventurous, and probably not very many dull moments.
No,
at this point.
Not too many.
Yeah.
Where are the biggest? Okay, obviously size of bins, but some of the other changes that you've seen since you've been here 16 years. Like, how's the industry changed?
I guess.
Dryers,
technology,
resources.
I mean, me looking from the outside in, dryers would seem like the bit, because I remember having someone from Brock come and talk to us at Purdue about how they have a way to integrate all this technology so that way you can remotely monitor your grain dryer, right? Because it's got to be a technology thing, right? Yeah, it has to be. Maybe just one of, but yeah, because granted, you're always checking. I remember Grandpa always telling me he'd get up at whatever hour interval to go check the dryer because one time he didn't, and then things did not end up very well the next morning when he came out to check it. So like being able to do that and have remote
from your
phone is got to be a huge thing, right?
And they've got that now, and in the automatic, the controller, the True Grain controller, that we use on the Brock dryers has been really accurate. If anybody had a Brock dryer and you mentioned the word quantum controller, they'd roll their eyes. And so the new Intuidry has been really good. New True Grain sensor has been really good also as far as that goes, been accurate, and just the ability to watch see the display. You can see what's going on in the corn. You can pull it up on your phone. If it's in automatic mode, you really don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
But you could switch it to manual. There's some guys that even though they have the capability of going in automatic, they just like the manual controls
of it.
And so they can watch it. Oh, I need to tweak it up or down a little bit. So that's been huge. And as far as that goes,
what about just the size of jobs, size of bins? I take it.
Everything's just getting bigger. Back in the day, my dad. So when I was a little kid, so back in the early '80s, my dad was a school teacher, and he actually built bins for Dave Troxel, in the
summer.
And he there were some years he was gone, dawn to dusk sometimes, but he'd make more in the summer building bins than he would teaching.
I can believe that.
But they would sell 200, 250 bins in a year, just a bunch of small bins, and I remember when I sold my first 105 foot diameter bin, I told my dad, and he He's like, wow. He's like, I remember when we built our first 36-foot,
Yeah.
10 ring bin.
Yeah.
That was huge,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So it's just over the years, we maybe aren't putting up more bushels per se. It's just they're getting more condensed into bigger.
Yeah.
And you know, back in the day, a grain leg that did 3,000 bushel an hour was huge, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
And so now 6,000 bushel an hour is pretty common.
And it's going with the way
it's
our
going with-
combines are, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's
right.
because
Yeah.
we're pulling a whole lot more bushels out of
Yeah.
the field fast. You guys are adapting.
So sorry, Josh, I'm gonna cut you off. So you said 200 to 250 bins in the past, but like now, what do you expect to spell or expect to sell? Excuse me, in like a year.
Oh, it varies, you know.
Grant, like you said, for the market, whatever else. But
yeah, I mean, we've had it to where we've sold, 30 bins, 35. It just all depends on the size. I think this year have several 48-foot diameter bins. That seems to be the bin of choice. Some 36s and some 48s, but
and back then it was probably a lot more bins with augers. Now you're doing again probably more legs and the kind of the U troughs and the conveyors and things like that too.
Because you can only get so tall and still be able to fill it with an auger.
Yep.
And then then the auger's too long to pull down the road, and it's just a lot of work. For augers.
So I think about this business and give me your perspective on this. It's been a great business. You guys have been busy pretty much year in and year out. And you always kind of wonder, how many more bins can we sell? Once guys have their facilities set up, how do you think that works, that you're still doing this? I mean, it's a longer term depreciating asset like a shed, or even longer. So how do you think this business has still been able to provide a resource that you think at some point there'd be enough of them out there they wouldn't need them anymore? Do you ever think about that?
I do. I remember Dave saying, I don't know how we're going to sell, with the amount of bins we're putting up, how are we going to sell more, bins down the road? It's just equipment will, eventually wear out, or we'll go into a facility that had a 3,000 bushel leg and they want to put a 8,000 bushel leg in, just the facility has grown. I don't see it ever really necessarily slowing down necessarily, I mean, as the economy goes, because in our area, I've got a cousin out in central Illinois that, he's got 5 grain elevators within a couple miles of his house that he can take it to. So he doesn't have to worry about that. But there have been so many years that here in our area that guys would come in and said, if I'd have had that 50,000 bushel bin, I'd have my corn crop in before this wet spell came.
Oh, yeah.
And now I'd have been done, early October or whatever. And now it's going to be Thanksgiving, or, there've been so many times that's probably the biggest
convenience factor,
selling point. You got the 2 selling points, in my opinion, of the bins is, number one, the just being able to get out of the field.
And so, I agree with that.
I mean, there's a fine line there, but you got to be able to get out of the field. And what we found with guys with grain dryers is some of the bigger guys that they know that they're going to have to haul out 150,000 bushel. They just can't store it. So they'll fire their grain dryer up and they'll go after that grain when most guys aren't.
Right.
They'll dry it down. They'll take it in, sometimes they're even offering, higher premiums to get an early corn in.
Yes.
Yep. So they know that, okay, I need to market this much. I can do it ahead of time with my dryer and get out there. And then that also leaves them. So when they get later in the season, elevators are getting full. You got a 3-hour line. They can still go and dump multiple trucks.
Right. The logistics have changed with the country. Elevator situation is changing. And that I know, I agree with that it's sitting in line. We've got some elevators that have kind of dropped off the map. That's affected things a lot. But I've always told customers from an agronomic standpoint, I would rather harvest wet corn than flat corn any day.
Yeah.
And being able to get that corn out if you got a weather event coming. There's been falls where we've had a lull in harvest, and it's been really ugly having to go back out in November when stuff's going flat. I've also had customers tell me that there's no tool on their farm that makes them as much as their dryer does.
Yeah. They're costly. They're a big investment, obviously. But yeah, you can go after the grain a lot earlier in season. And
What do you think the future of this business looks like? Do you ever think about that?
I think it's strong. I think as a dealership, I think the goal is, it'd be nice to be able to expand, but it's challenging on the grain handling side of things because you have to have that skilled millwright. Yep. A couple skilled millwrights, and so I think it's kind of like everything else, you know. I mean, as long as we're going to be putting a crop in the ground and bringing it out, you're going to need bins and storage and conveying equipment. So it's just always going to be there.
What about from a technology standpoint? I mean, do you ever dream like, hey, I could see the product coming, you know? Do you ever think about what could be down the road technology wise or product wise that would,
I was gonna say maybe not even like electronically based, but like you said, Josh said, like a new innovation, whether it's a new type of dryer, a new type of way to store the grain in a bin.
What can we change?
I know, right? It's been pretty unchanged for the most part, right?
Right.
It's putting grain in a bin.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, a dryer is just heat, time, and air. You know, and it's pretty basic technology, but yet there's probably room for advancement. But
like maybe a different type of fuel. That's something that comes to my mind as a different type of way to fuel that dryer. Yeah, potentially.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you know what 30, 40 years ago, nobody thought about a phone that you're going to carry in your hand and have that much technology. So I'm sure there's something coming down the pipe
tech wise.
Yeah. I guess we kind of talked about it a little bit already, but like, do you foresee a lot more new installations, or will it be, hey, we've outgrown our current storage, or we need to add to our current storage? Because it sounds like you've kind of put up maybe less new facilities and kind of maybe upgraded newer ones that needed expanded, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, very rarely do we just go out and do that new greenfield. Yeah. You know, hey, here we go, we're going to put it in. There's always been a bin that, you know, Grandpa built somewhere, and inevitably you hear, I don't know why Grandpa built that bin over there. But,
oh boy,
you know, they just kind of there wasn't a lot of foresight in, you know, years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think going forward, it's going to be, hey, how can we make this work? Or sometimes we've had talk of, okay, this is our drying facility now, but maybe we turn this into a bean facility, and across the drive we put up in a new dryer, and so just I think it's going to be a lot of that. You know, just how can we make this facility work a little bit better, more streamlined, more efficient?
Sounds like it may almost get harder then. Because you said those greenfield installations were kind of easier than the existing ones, and then you're going to be tasked with trying to make something like pull a rabbit out of your hat, like be magical, or no?
No, I mean, the greenfields are fun, but it is fun. I always enjoyed that challenge of how do we make this work for the customer? How can we make what he has, you know, still hold value in it, and make it work? And some of the technologies and grain transfers makes it fun to do that. So
it's good stuff, man. TRULAND Equipment, Grain Handling Division.
Get your Brock bins here.
Yeah, Bluffton, Indiana. So yeah, man, good work. You guys are doing great work. I know you are, because we have a good staff and you guys are busted it out there. So appreciate you jumping on with us today. It's been pretty fun and pretty informative.
Yeah, appreciate being here.
Thanks for being on, Luke.
Talk to you next time.
See you guys.